again, and welcome to the Author Roundup. This special segment of the Book Connection Show showcases emerging indie authors who join us for a discussion of their newly published books. Join us for a conversation with our next guest author. Hey there, welcome to Author Roundup. My name is Emma, and I will be your host for today's episode. Today I have self-published author Lila Naimark. Lila grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana, with a love of fast cars, top 40s music, and summer vacations on the family farm in Tennessee. Retired from a high-tech career, Lila now enjoys photography, travel, her grandchildren, and music from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Her book, Duke of Earl, Rock and Roll, Religion, and My Road to the Real Me is out now, and she's here to discuss it with us today. Hi, Lila. How are you today?
Hey Emma, I'm great. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. So your book was released last year. Can you share more about it with us, please?
Of course, yeah. So this is a book. It's about my life from ages 12 to 24.
Okay.
And during I had been born into a household to a very strict religion.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I was 12, I realized that it just didn't fit with me very well. So the book, to me, the theme of the book is longing. I longed to be something that fit more with me and who I felt that I was.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I didn't like where I was. Well, I mean, it's a little hard. I didn't like being in the religion. It was very,
Mm-hmm.
very restrictive, as you'll
Mm-hmm.
see in the book. And I wanted to be a little more free and to do and be what I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's basically you'll see also in it, a there are many threads of sexism, how
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of ingrained sexism and institutionalized sexism, as well as racism. So there are those things. Those are the darker parts, but there are also some fun parts. I mean, I had a lot of fun. The '60s were fun,
Mm-hmm.
despite the fact that I was in church 90 times a week, it seemed.
Oh God.
But I still managed to have fun, especially as I got a little bit older and
Mm-hmm.
was driving myself and had a little more
Okay.
freedom. So the
Yeah.
book is about my journey, as the title says. It has rock and roll, it has religion, and it's finally my road to the real me.
Mm-hmm. And so that question that, a lot of people may quietly carry with you, was I born into the wrong life? So you said that surfaced for you at like 12, right?
I'm right about 12, yeah.
12. So when you came upon that question, did you talk to anyone about it, or was it still quietly being carried with you and you just went
It
with the
was quiet.
flow?
It was quiet. I mean, in my
Yeah.
family, and to some extent in that time, you didn't talk about things.
Yeah.
My family, it was very clear, it was made very clear that the religion was where you had to be,
Yeah.
and I had no choice. It's like if you left the religion, you'd go to a terrible hell and you'd worse than
Hmm.
usual, and
Hmm.
you'd miss the rapture and go through the great tribulation. And I didn't talk to anybody about it. I guess when I first started realizing it was when one of my first realizations when is in the book in the chapter where I have a picnic in Garfield Park in Indianapolis with my friend,
Hmm.
and she's my age, and we've always been very, very close. Sorry. And she starts talking about this radio program that the church is going to start, a national broadcast called Harvest Time. And she
Hmm.
said there's going to be, it'll be an hour every week. And my first thought was, oh, awful. And then I thought, oh, no, I'm not supposed to think that. I'm supposed to be excited about it. But I
Hmm.
wasn't. I thought, we sit in church 4 to 5 times a week. And why do I want another hour on the radio, especially when I could be listening to rock and roll on the radio? So
Hmm.
that was like a first, like, ooh, but I didn't say anything to her. But by that time, it was already evident that I had sinned because cutting your hair was very much against the religion. And I go to great detail to explain that in the first chapter. I had cut my bangs,
Mm,
which got me into a lot of trouble
mm.
and cost me an award at school. I was going to a Pentecostal grade
Oh my
school.
gosh. Oh
And it
wow.
turns out there was this award that I wanted very, very much when I graduated. It was sort of like uh, summa cum laude, or, basically it was going to be the
Yeah.
top graduate. And I wanted that so badly. And then my principal told me that, and at first they weren't going to even allow me back into the eighth grade because I had cut my bangs.
Oh my gosh.
And then, so my principal, I was allowed back into the school, but my principal told me that promise never to cut your bangs again. And I said, I won't. No, I'm never cutting my hair ever again. And he said, by the way, you, this is odd. He said, by the way, you had been the teacher's top choice for this award, but you understand that we can't give it to you now.
Because of your hair. Oh my gosh.
And just my bangs. It was like,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
yeah. So that was like, that was my first rebellion. My first sin was cutting my
Hmm.
hair, and my first realization. And at that point, I was thinking, I didn't want to be in the religion because I wanted to look good. But then in that at the picnic where she's talking about this exciting Pentecostal broadcast, and I thought, ooh, and I thought, oh, well, maybe it's more than just wanting to cut my hair. Maybe I
Hmm.
just do not, I don't fit in here. It's not for me. But
Yeah.
what do I do with that? If it's not for me, what does that mean for my eternal life, right?
Yeah. And I feel like as a child, that's probably scary to think about because you probably had to balance, like obedience and fear, like that fear you just mentioned, and like love from your parents. So I'm sure that tension for you as a child was pretty tough.
It was very tough. It
Hmm.
was very tough. And I was so afraid of the rapture. And
Hmm.
I know at night I would lie in bed and making sure that I heard my mother and father breathing so that
Hmm.
I knew that they hadn't gone up in the rapture and I had missed. One night I didn't hear my mother breathing for a bit, and I thought, oh my God. I didn't think, oh my God. I didn't think about it. I thought,
Yeah.
oh no. So I looked out the window to see if I could see the moon, to see if it had turned to blood. And
Mm.
I couldn't see the moon, so I ran to the bathroom to turn on the faucet to see if blood would come out of the faucet. And just then I heard my mother snore. So there's no,
Oh, I can go back to sleep.
I have not been left behind.
Yeah. And so music plays a huge role in your book, almost like a second narrator. How did top 40s songs help you understand, feeling you couldn't yet put into words or feel understand your feelings?
Well, how did it? I'm not sure how it did, but basically the top 40 music, that was my escape. It was a lifeline to that
Mm-hmm.
other world that I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the song, I mean, you'll notice that in some of the chapters, the songs are a huge comfort to me.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they take me back to a different time. But that was basically, I actually, someone said in my, I got to read one of my reviews where it said, uh, yeah, I found, this person said, I found Neymark's connecting of life situations, religious beliefs, and popular music especially effective. Music triggers strong emotions,
Mm-hmm.
and her music choices helped me feel what she was experiencing.
Oh, wow. That's really powerful. That's
Mm.
cool. Yeah. And so, some type of music that you listen to, you included both pop music and gospel music as part of your like soundtrack. How so do these worlds for you, two worlds compete or clash together, or did they sync up for you, or did they balance each other out?
They didn't balance each other out. They did. I mean, it got more and more clashing, I guess, as time went
Yeah.
along, as the
Hmm.
end was near, if you will.
Yeah.
But they were, I would go to church and I'd listen to the church music and
Hmm.
enjoy that. I mean, one really great thing about Pentecostal churches is music, and
Hmm.
it's very lively. I mean, they have pianos, organs, guitars, drums, uh, bass. I mean, it's just the music is great, and people
Hmm.
clap, and it's very emotive.
Yeah.
So. I liked the emotiveness of it
Yeah.
because, and then also in rock and roll music, there's a lot of emotion. So in a way, I'm thinking that maybe that the Pentecostal music sort of almost was a gateway drug to
Hmm.
rock and roll,
Yeah.
unfortunately for Pentecostal. But anyway, yeah. So it was, yeah, I guess they didn't really, I didn't see them as competing. It was almost like I was living two different lives in many ways,
Yeah.
and it became more. I mean, for a while, it wasn't that important. I mean, I would
Yeah.
listen to the radio when I was at home, and I would listen to church music when I was at my Pentecostal grade school and at church. But then more and more they impinged upon one another.
Hmm. And when you were listening to pop music at home, did you have to keep that private or hide it, or were you able to listen to like that type of music at home?
That's funny, a funny question, interesting question because I didn't really hide it, except
Uh-huh.
sometimes what I did. So my father, I had to be step carefully listening to it around my father
Oh,
because
yeah.
he would tolerate it, but then commercials would come on, and if it was a and back then you had beer
Oh.
and cigarette commercials, and he would cut that off, Lila Ruth, he'd say, and and so I'd have to cut off the music, and then then I'd
Turn it
sneak
down.
back in.
That's funny.
So that's a good. I like that question. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So in your book, you talked about ages from 12 to 24. So from 1959 to 71, correct?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
how did the cultural changes of the 1960s influence your sense of identity and your possibility of what your life could look like, once you like moved out of your house?
I would say they quite a bit because I mean things changed very drastically in the 60s. I mean, there was there were the hippie. Well, for let's start. The Vietnam War was one sort of thing. It's like, okay, all this war and all this killing, and theoretically they were saying we were winning, but it's like, okay, if we're winning, why aren't we winning? Why are we still there?
Hmm.
And then people started protesting. Then there were the hippies and the Summer of Love in San Francisco, which I read about, and it just seemed like people were being much more free. The
Hmm.
music was much more interesting and whimsical, if you will.
Hmm.
So it just, and the Beatles, I hadn't liked the Beatles initially, and then I started liking them when they went into their Sergeant Pepper phase.
Hmm.
Uh, so I would say, and basically, I saw that people were living very different lives than they had lived in 1971 than people
Hmm.
had lived in 1959. It was just the atmosphere was so different. And I
Hmm.
think that had to impact me. I mean, I had all these questions about the Vietnam War. Why are we there? You had all these people out protesting about it.
Hmm.
And the people I lived with, yeah, yeah, well, what are those protesters doing? They're wrong and they're spitting in the face of America, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, is it really? Why are we there? I mean, I don't quite get it.
Yeah.
And I was told that, well, we're there because the government says we should be. And then my mother had said, well, she then hearkened back to World War II and said, well, sometimes you just war is bad, but sometimes you just have to go to war. And if we hadn't gone to war in World War II, there'd be commies on our shore today. And it was like always keeping the commies off our shore. And I thought, well, the commies they're talking about are thousands and thousands of miles away. It
It
sort
makes
of
sense.
the religions. I had questions about the religion starting and the questions about what people around me were saying. It was just like total, total chaos and total confusion in my head.
Yeah. And so questions like that popped up in your life, in different periods of your life, did questions like that pop up and also come to surface you to ask your parents maybe about religion or anything that you thought was more like serious matters? Were you able to openly ask your parents about like your religion at all?
No, I didn't dare. I knew what they would say. I mean, there was no asking them anything. I can't. I'm just trying to think back, Emma, to see if I ever asked them anything about the religion.
Hmm.
And I don't think I did. I certainly can't remember it. It was just, I knew that it was so hardwired into who they were that I
Hmm.
knew what their answers would be. I
Hmm.
mean, the only thing that I did question was, the Vietnam War
Yeah.
and why are we doing this? And they
Mhm.
had loved, for instance, in the book, I talk about how they had loved FDR so much. And one day I found a quote by FDR saying, that basically war is really bad. And I thought, oh, if I show them what FDR said, they're going to think it's bad too, and that's going to clear everything up.
Right.
So I took the quote to them, and my father said, "They're just saying he said that." And I
Oh.
said, "But it's right here." He said, "You can't always tell by them books." And I thought, oh,
Oh.
okay. And then my mother made the quote about, well, war is bad, but sometimes it's necessary, and we don't
Yeah.
want the commies coming over here. So that was probably the most serious question we ever had about anything. Never did I question religion. It was like,
Yeah.
and some people in church would question religion, like, and the answers would lead me to further and further away from the religion. Like
Yeah.
one time during a Bible study or something, they were talking about where Jesus turned the water into wine. So
Mhm.
one brave girl, not me, I'm sad to say, had said he said, "Well, why
Why?
can't we drink wine? Jesus drank wine. Why are we not supposed to drink wine?" And they said, "Well, in the Bible, when it says wine, it doesn't really mean wine." And I thought, okay, what else does the Bible say that it doesn't
Right.
really mean?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so were you ever able to talk about, your childhood with your parents at all and just, as you got older?
Not really. No, I mean,
Oh.
at that point, I'd become such a blatant sinner. They didn't want to talk to me about anything. I mean, they were still very loving. I,
Yeah.
I don't want to give the impression they weren't loving,
Hmm.
but my opinion didn't count for anything that they would want. It's like,
Hmm.
well, she's wrong, so why would
Yeah.
we talk to her?
Mm.
I did talk to my brother. So many years after this book ends,
Yeah.
uh, my brother left the church.
Oh, really?
But ish, I would say he left the church ish. So he had started going to let's say a Baptist church.
Uh-huh.
And we were talking one day, and he said, well, Mama and Daddy think that their church, their people are the only ones going to heaven. And I
Hmm.
said, I know, can you believe that? And yeah, he said, they're not, we are. It's like, he traded
Yeah.
one,
Not really different.
it was no different. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that was another thing about the religion that turned me off. It was like the United Pentecostal Church people are the only ones going to heaven. And I thought, what?
Hmm.
If Jesus died on the cross, if God gave his only son to save the world, it's like, oh, what a tiny portion. Did he really do that for itty bitty
Yeah.
United Pentecostal Church, which had started in 1916? So, yeah.
Hmm. And so so you describe, being an outsider in multiple ways, by accent and belief system and desire for a bigger life. How did that sense of not fitting in maybe in a way shape who you became or who you are today?
I think it shaped it a lot. I mean, I have a lack of confidence because I would have thoughts about things. I mean, that continued always, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm a little better now, but, in school,
Yeah.
at work, I would hesitate to speak up about something because it's like, oh, I can't really, what do I know? Or I can't really,
Yeah.
I wouldn't know anything and no one will listen to me. So it,
Hmm.
it definitely impacted. Yeah. So, and it's like, I don't, I had a sense of not belonging. I mean, it continued. It was
Yeah.
greatly lessened, but the sense of not belonging continued.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so with the ending, without spoiling the ending, your final turning point involves a VW Beetle and a song
Ah,
that radio. Why was that moment such a powerful symbol of choice and freedom for you?
Well, first of all, I mean, what are the chances? I mean, it was something that if I mean, if people read it, probably think it didn't really happen, but it did.
Hmm.
And it was like I had been struggling for weeks with what to do, and now it was down to the last moment.
Hmm.
And I had said, I'm not going. And I had actually written a check to them for what they had paid for me. And,
Hmm.
uh, but then I just thought, and they mentioned Jerusalem, which had an impact on me. I guess the
Hmm.
guy, Nick, had said next year in Jerusalem. And I thought, Jerusalem. And I thought about the Israelites and their exodus and how this was to have been my exodus. And I was walking away from it. And so riding in my Volkswagen Beetle, and I thought, okay, I'm going to turn on the radio, and the next song that I turn on will just decide.
Yeah.
And when that came out, I mean, I don't want to have any spoilers here, but
Right. Yeah.
when that song came at that point in that song, when that came out of the speaker, I
Yeah.
had to pull over to the side of the road to avoid having an accident. It was like, okay, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. The radio has spoken. So
Yeah.
again, the radio and music, rock and roll was my guide, right?
Yeah.
It continued to be my guide and my cheerleader and my advisor.
Yeah. I love that. And so I'm sure like writing, a book like this required, revisiting, deeply personal memories for you. What surprised you most about yourself while looking back? And was there any was there hard times while writing this book that you had to go back and revisit some moments that maybe weren't as pleasant?
Yeah, there were a few moments in the book that I still have trouble reading, having
Um,
written them and read them like 1,000 times.
yeah.
Uh, the time when I was moving away from home
Mm,
and and the deception. I was upset at how what a I use deception and deflection a lot. I
hmm.
was never straightforward.
Hmm.
I just couldn't, and it was like, again, I'd been raised, head in the sand. If you
Yeah.
don't talk about it, it doesn't exist. So
Yeah.
I would do things, but I wouldn't tell anybody, like, again, moving away from home.
Hmm.
And it pained me to realize that I was so much like that.
Yeah. And so people that listeners who grew up in a or who are growing up in restrictive environments, religious or otherwise, what do you hope your story gives them permission to do, or what do you hope they get out of your story? Or what would you say to them?
I would say to them, I mean, look at what, I mean, it took me 12 years
Hmm.
and a lot of ups and downs and a
Hmm.
lot of pain along the way.
Yeah.
And I just sort of held on to that idea that this is not where I belong and this is where I want to be. So I
Yeah.
just held on to the idea. So what I would hope, if one person reads my story and takes hope from that,
Hmm.
I would feel very gratified. And, I don't have to know about it. I just would like to let people know. It's sort of like a couple of years ago, there was a It Gets Better sort of campaign where, basically I think that was for LGBTQ people, where,
Hmm.
yes, life is bad, but it gets better.
Hmm.
So I would just like people to know that it does get better. The
Hmm.
world doesn't come to a crashing halt because you do these things that you've been told not to do.
Hmm.
Uh, it's just it can happen, but hold on tight to the dream. So,
Hmm.
and do what you can along the way, and
Yeah.
look for the helpful people. I certainly had quite a few helpful people that I feel were like midwives for my
Hmm.
escape.
Hmm.
Uh, so helpful people, guidelines like I had like the lifelines like music and the Duke of Earl. That, I mean, really, the Duke of Earl, when I first heard that song, that truly did, that was changed my mind. It was like, oh, maybe I can do this. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, it took me 9 or 10 more years to do it, but the Duke was always, rock and roll was always my lifeline, my inspiration, and my comfort.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, not everyone's going to have that sort of comfort, but there's something. Look for something that can help you and hold on to your dream. That's what I would say.
Mm-hmm. And so, what inspired you to write your story and to ultimately get it published?
So, what inspired? So, 25 years ago, I was in a writing class at Stanford, one of the extension
Oh,
classes, and
cool.
the assignment for one of the class, they said, write about for your assignment for next week, write about some turning point in your life, some magical moment in your life. And
Uh-huh.
I thought, I mean, even though this was many years after I had met the Duke, I thought, well, I'm just going to write about the Duke of Earl and the impact it had on me. So I did that. People reacted well to it in the class. I enjoyed having written it. And then I just put it aside. The class was over. I put
Mm-hmm.
it aside for 4 or 5 years. And then a friend of mine who knew that I loved writing started a writers group. So I dusted off the old Duke of Earl story. I got it out of storage and I said, okay, this will be my first foray, my first submission to the writers group. So
Mm-hmm.
we worked on that. People liked it. I enjoyed it. And then I thought, oh, well, I need more because the writers group went on for like 7 or 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I then had the idea of doing chapters, and each chapter would have a song. I mean, each one at that point, each chapter had the title of the chapter was a song
Mm-hmm.
title. So it was always using the lyrics, and then eventually the writers group broke up. But I continued working with one person. She was fantastic and helped to guide me. And then at one point I decided, well, I want this to be a book. But then it was 19 short stories, right? It wasn't a book. And so how
Mm-hmm.
do you stitch that together? So I had to figure out how to stitch the book together and make it into a book and not just a collection of short stories.
Mm-hmm.
And so then once I did that, it was is it good enough or what do I do with it? And again, I sort of put it on ice for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, here comes the helpful people part or people sent by the universe. I mean, it's like this woman I hadn't talked to in years contacted me and we went out to dinner. And after dinner, she said, well, what are you doing these days? I said, well, I'm working on a book. She said, oh, my other friend is working on a book too. Let me get you guys together. So it turned out that that woman was going at a much faster speed than I was, but we were still at the same point.
Oh, cool.
And so she and I both, my book was published last October, hers in
Mm-hmm.
November. So it
Mm-hmm.
was that nudge from the universe in the
Mm-hmm.
form of that friend introducing me to her friend that got me going and got me, and I contacted Archway and started the process.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And so, how did it feel, finally having your book in your hands, getting it, through the mail, and what was your first reaction to holding your book for the first time?
It was very surreal. I mean, it's like, oh, there's my name in big
Yeah.
letters. And there's a Duke of Earl, and everybody, and it was like, what is everyone Duke of Earl? Everyone's going to think that's crazy, or I just was thinking, are people going to hate this, or are my daughters? I was worried about my daughter's reaction. I thought, oh, they're going to see what a weaselly, deceptive person I was, and are they going to hate me? But uh, they don't. But it was like a magical moment seeing that book, and again, surreal. It's
Yeah.
something I didn't really it's something I'd thought about doing for a long time and had
Mhm.
never quite made it happen. So I was very pleased with myself for having pushed
Yeah.
through. And
Good.
I again have to thank that friend of a friend for
Mhm.
getting me there.
Yeah. Is there a favorite part of your book that you enjoyed writing the most, or is there a part of your book that you enjoy the most?
And that's tough. It's like asking, do you have a favorite child? Which I do not. But I would have to say, I think that the part I like best is the chapter about Roses Are Red, which is the chapter about my aunt,
Okay.
Bubba. And
Hmm.
she was quite a woman. I don't know if you remember that chapter, but she was a feminist before her time.
Oh,
She didn't. My mother always said, and her name was Clarice, and my mother would say, "Clarice don't give two hoots what anyone thinks about her," and she didn't. And then, she was what thought was really old. She's 52, and I thought, did men still like her? And she just didn't. She was so confident. And she was wonderful. So I loved reading about her. And then
oh,
she's the one in that chapter. I mean, the chapter is full of, I think, wonderful things. It's when she told me that my very righteous father had been a wild, crazy guy in his teens who went out
hmm.
drinking, had gotten involved in a knife fight. And I said, but he's so religious now. And
Yeah.
she said, heck, the only time I ever saw him pray was kneeling in the cornfield, had three sheets to the wind on a Sunday morning, hugging mama's knees, asking for her forgiveness.
Oh my gosh. I bet that was like, wow, people do make mistakes, even my parents.
Yeah. So he was, and yeah, so I knew that he had gone to California, but I didn't know that he had been a wild, and I knew that he had a knife scar on his back,
Oh my
but
gosh.
I never asked questions about it. I thought, well, daddy got in a bar fight. And
Yeah.
it never occurred to me that daddy got in a bar fight because he was out drinking and being wild and crazy on Saturday night.
Oh my gosh.
So
Wow.
I would have to say that Roses Are Red is my favorite chapter. And in that, I mean, I think about my father being a wild and crazy guy who somehow had the gumption to go out to California from Tennessee in the 30s, and my aunt Bubba, who just was, uh, I mean, she was always very sure of herself.
Hmm.
And I thought, my thought was, if only I could have just one drop of that bright red blood, if that could run through my system. I just want one drop of their bright red blood.
Hmm.
And it was a very, yeah, that whole chapter, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And at the end, there's a moment. So my father, very distant, I was distant from him.
Yeah.
But when I got home from that ride where Bubba is telling me all these things, Daddy, we were in Tennessee. Daddy was sitting on the porch with his mama, my nanny. And at that moment, I feel such sympathy for him. And I go up and say, "Hi, Daddy." And I'm gonna cry. And I
Aw.
put my hand on his arm, which I'd never done. And he said,
Mhm.
"Hi, sis, how are you?" And he gave me one of his bright smiles that we never got.
Mhm.
And it was, I thought, oh, if I had been nicer to him. I mean, there was just a lot of things, but
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of things happened in that chapter that sort of shaped think going forward.
Yeah. Oh, that seems like a special one. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Especially with
Yeah.
you and your dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was there a difficult part of your writing process at all? Or,
I would say the most difficult part was, so I had written in present tense.
oh, okay.
And I sent it, and I thought, well, let's send this to a real editor, not just my
Hmm.
book people, my writers group people.
Hmm.
And so I sent it to an editor, and he said, you need to do this in past tense. He said, it
Oh,
doesn't make sense in present tense.
yeah.
And he convinced me, but so then I had to go through the entire thing. At that point, it was done. I mean, it was
Yeah.
complete-ish.
Yeah.
And I had to go through and make sure that everything, the tenses were changed in every case, which, it took two or three edits from other people to catch all of those.
Yeah.
So that was the most difficult part of the writing
Mhm.
process.
Okay.
Uh, Another part that was somewhat difficult, but sort of fun, was so some of the people in the book, I use their real names because I've been able to get their permission.
Hmm.
So I would say like 10% of the names are real. All of
Hmm.
the people are real, but most of the names are not. So
Oh.
it was going through and naming everybody and then putting together a spreadsheet. Okay, this is what she's called.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and then making sure that in every case I caught that. And as I've been told several times, in one case I did not. So
Mhm.
an important character is his real name is called out at one point. It's like, oh,
Mm.
so. But those were the only, I guess another difficult part is just knowing when to stop. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
when is it good enough? And
Mhm.
yeah, so
Yeah. Okay.
those were the three worst parts, I would say.
Mhm. And so what's the feedback or what's a good review you've received about your book so far, other than the one that you mentioned?
Other than the one that I read, well, I've
Yeah.
got a few nice ones. I'll read a couple for you.
Okay. Yes,
I mean,
perfect. Please do.
okay. Duke of Earl pulled me in from the very first page. Lila Naimark writes with such vivid cinematic detail that it feels less like reading and more like stepping straight into her world. Another one, the author's a great storyteller.
Oh.
Not far into the book, I forgot I was reading a memoir. It captivated me in the engaging way that fiction books do.
Oh my gosh, that's lovely.
Isn't that nice? And that person, I didn't write down this part to read here, but that person went on to say, she said, after reading it for a while, I found myself thinking in a Tennessee accent.
Oh my gosh. Wow. So you really put this person into your book and oh wow.
And that's what I've gotten over and over. And last night at the book club, this is what people are saying, you do these details that really puts you in the moment in this. She
Hmm.
said, I just everyone said I found myself right there with you.
Yeah.
And to
Hmm.
me, that was valuable because it's not so much about the story, it's about my writing. That goes to my writing skills, which,
Yeah.
you never know what they are. And that felt good to me.
Yeah.
Another thing someone said last night, which I found very wonderful, she said, I found it fascinating. She said, I don't know how you did this, but your writing voice changes from the age 12 until you get to 24. And you can see your voice or your basically the way you talk, the way you think ages along with you.
Hmm.
And I thought, wow, that's what I was hoping for. And I didn't do that deliberately. And it's just, I was just, I just go there. I mean, to me,
Yeah.
music is like a time machine. So when I play
Yeah.
those songs, that's where my brain sits and I'm talking and thinking the way that I did then.
Hmm. Wow, that's so cool. Those are really nice compliments. And what has your family thought of your book, your daughters,
Well, no.
family
So
members?
my husband, it was like, oh yeah, it's nice. It's like, okay. So thanks for the ringing endorsement. My second daughter, my first daughter hasn't read it yet. She
Mhm.
had a really busy start to her year. My other daughter has read it, and she said, "I enjoyed it. I don't see why you were afraid for us to read it. That because I had told." She said, "Why didn't you tell us about this?" And I said, "I was afraid you wouldn't like me anymore."
Hmm.
And she said, "Oh, well." That's crazy. Said I really enjoyed it and it's wonderful. But nobody in the family has given me the ringing endorsements that others have. So
Hmm.
I don't know.
Good.
And one funny thing. So I have my fifth grandchild was just born last week. So, but my
Oh,
first one, my
congrats.
first one, Noah, is a voracious reader. And
Really?
so my book was, Sarah, his mother, my daughter, had taken the book home and she found that he was sneaking and reading it. He's 10. And she said, "Well, Noah, wait until we can read it together. Don't read it just now." She
Yeah.
said, but then the next day she noticed that he was going around talking in a Southern accent. So she knew he'd been reading it because he
Mhm.
too was speaking in Tennessean. So uh,
Oh, that's so cute. Oh my God, I love that.
and he was excited because I had mentioned in there that that the important thing in my life now is my grandchildren. He thought that was
Yeah.
wonderful. So
Oh, and he's one of them. Yeah. And I'm sure he thought it was really, cool that you wrote a book,
I think he did.
He
And
wanted
he
to know what
started.
it was all about.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm anxious to hear what he and his mother think of the book.
Hmm.
But the other daughter liked it. So I don't know. I've gotten, some better, more glowing reviews from non-family members.
Yeah. And so what advice would you give to a writer working on their first book, whether it be a memoir or another genre?
Well, I would just say again, this is very trite sounding, but it's like sort of follow your heart, write about what you know,
Hmm.
and know that there will be tough days when you're thinking, I can't do this or this is just impossible.
Yeah.
Again, that gets into a it gets better type of scenario. Just
Hmm.
walk away for a bit. Uh, don't be afraid to share your writing with other writers because they
Hmm.
can help. And make sure you have nice, constructive people and not critical, nasty
Yeah.
people to work with. But
Yeah,
other
true.
writers can, I always thought, oh, well, I know everything about this. I know everything about writing. But then people would point out, my other readers would point out, well, what about this and what about that? So
Hmm.
having other people read and react to what you're writing
Hmm.
makes it ever so much richer, I think.
Nice. Yeah, that's really good advice. Well, what are your professional and personal goals for this year?
Well, my professional goals, of course, is to sell more books, but and just to get the word out there. I've been waiting, so an audio book is in process right now. So I've been waiting until the audio book is ready before I do a big push. So I
Hmm.
want to do a really big push. I also want to, sort of my dream is to speak at bookstores in Indianapolis because I figure they're the ones that would have the biggest, that's what I've written about mostly is Indianapolis. And there aren't, what John Green has, several people have
Yeah.
written about Indianapolis, but uh, I figure one more is good. And about tech, I've never seen tech mentioned in a book. So,
Mhm.
I'd like to hit hard on that in the bookstores that are in the tech area. So I don't know. I mean, I'd love to speak in other bookstores as well and other book clubs. In fact, I'm scheduled for one in April.
Oh,
So it's
cool.
just
Yeah.
getting the word out and talking
Okay.
about my
Yeah.
book.
That's awesome.
And as I said to you earlier, a personal goal is just if I can touch one person's life and
Hmm.
make them see that, yes, this seems impossible. Because to me, when I was 12,
Hmm.
being out of the religion was an impossible dream. It just seemed
Yeah.
like it is absolutely not possible. And yet
Hmm.
here I am. So
Yeah.
just hold on to your dream. And if someone realizes that from my book, then I've been
That would
successful.
be amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to ask, so I'm sure that when you cut your bangs, it was really traumatizing, but what was it like when you cut your hair,
Mm.
the next time? Was it really hard to go through that? Because I can imagine after.
Oh my God, it was really hard. No, it was, well, there's a whole thing of, first of all, being outed. It's, I had this whole thing where I would hide it at home. I mean,
Yeah.
living the double life, totally
Oh,
French twist. And I'd
I can
stop on the
imagine.
way to school and take it down. And I thought, well, there's only one or two Pentecostal people at Tech. And Tech, my high school was a 76-acre high school with like
Oh, wow.
several thousand students. So I thought, what are the chances? So there was that awful day when I was outside laughing and talking with my worldly friends, and I get the tap on my shoulder, and I turn around, and there is the person that I've called Raylene Horsley. And she said, now I see why it looks like you've cut your hair, uh, because you have. And she said, you better get right with the Lord. And then I'm sort of backpedaling there. It's like, oh,
Well,
Raylene, uh, oh, please forgive me. Again, trying to stay in both camps. I mean, that's an
yeah.
embarrassing thing to me as well, that I was just didn't have the courage of my convictions. And she said, yeah, yeah, right, right. And then I go back to my friends and because I'd stepped out of the circle, and she said, oh, my one friend said, oh, you are white as a sheet. What's wrong? I said, nothing, I'm fine.
Mhm.
And I was hoping that Raylene wouldn't go back and tell people, although I knew good and well that she would.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, And so the next time I was in church, and there's something called the altar call, where they try to get, the sinners to come forward, or people who have backslidden, and people who
Mhm.
are just straight out sinners new to the church. and there's this long altar call. The organ is playing, and the pastor is going on about, well, you better come to the Lord, and you could die tonight, all
Mhm.
those. And to me, I have the organ playing softly and tenderly. Jesus is calling, which I is so ironic. Jesus is calling, but if you don't answer, you're gonna get hit by a train tonight. Uh, and so then I thought, and it just went on and on. I thought, I'll bet he's looking for me. So we had our heads bowed, and I looked up, and he was looking right at me,
Oh my
and
God.
he pointed to me. He said, "Come on." And I was like, "Oh."
Oh, jeez.
And so, there was as soon as I stepped out into the aisle, the church exploded into, "Oh, hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus." And I was just I was the target of all of that, and
Mhm.
everybody was so happy that I had come to my senses. And then the saddest moment, so I went up to the altar, prayed, and everyone came and prayed with me for forgiveness. And
Mhm.
then when I got up from the altar, there was my dad sitting there in the chair right by the altar, tears streaming down his face. And he
Mhm.
said, what did you do? And I said, well, I cut my hair. And he said, but I've told you never to do that. It's like, but my whole life, everybody has told me never to do that. What are you talking about? And he said, it's that, oh God, I can't remember. It's that, he blamed my girlfriend, my worldly girlfriend that I'd been hanging out with, who in fact did cut my hair. He said, it's
Mhm.
her. You've been hanging out with her so much. It's her fault, isn't it? And I was a little offended because I thought, it's my fault. I made that decision.
Mhm.
Let me be the agent of my own life here. And
Mhm.
so yeah, that was bad. And then of course, right after that, I had the realization that I didn't have to live this double hair life anymore. I could just keep my hair down. So
Yeah,
anyway, it was pretty horrible. I mean, all those
another
trips to the
account. Yeah.
altar, me being a sinner, and the whole church. There was also I don't even remember, the maxi coat incident where I was wearing a maxi coat, which I thought was good because you're supposed to cover your body.
Mhm.
And everyone knew that he was preaching at me. And, I walked out of the auditorium, and people would sort of turn their head, averting their eyes from me because I was such a horrible person wearing a maxi coat. I mean, just you're made to feel horrible if you break
Mhm.
outside the bonds. And
Mhm.
I was on several occasions.
Mhm.
So, and that's feeling like I didn't fit. There was always feeling like I didn't quite fit. And then there's a
Mhm.
feeling of horrible. I've been wrong. So, and I've sinned. So
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm glad that you wrote it all down and you wrote about it, and now we have a book. And I just want to say thank you for being here. It was wonderful talking to you, and your book is, full of life and has a very unique story. And I hope listeners think so too and pick it up for
I
themselves.
do too. Duke of Earl
Yeah.
people pick up Duke of Earl, find it on Amazon or Archway Publishing, and buy it and then
Yeah.
review it. So so thank you everyone for listening. Thank
Yeah.
you, Emma.
Yeah. Thank
It's
you
been
so much for
fun.
being here.